live here. My name is Bob Dietrich. I am here with Hillary Sprider, and today we're going to talk about the fear of public speaking. And this fear of public speaking is a big deal. People say it's one of the biggest fears in the world. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's one of the biggest fears, but I think of a lot of scarier things. But it's a big one, and it's something that people need to engage, especially for their work and their career. And so understanding the fear and understanding there's a road beyond it is really important. I know Hillary's been working on with public speakers for quite some time. I have as well. And we've both been through the process of being scared in front of a group. And we want to share with you today what our experience has been to maybe help you get through that faster. So welcome, Hillary. Thanks for showing up today and coming out and sharing your experiences with everyone.
Thank you, Bob. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's hear a little bit first. Let's start with what your first experience was like with public speaking, and how did you deal with that fear? What was the fear like, and then how did you deal with it?
Well, my fear was, to me, surprising. I didn't know how, you hear everyone say, gosh, public speaking is really scary, and it's one of the, top listed scariest things that people do. But until you're up there on the stage with people looking at you, staring at you, essentially, it's really hard to understand. But I was like many people. I, was sweaty and got out of breath, and my mind went blank. So pretty much all the typical anxiety traits that people talk about.
Yeah, I remember my first time. I literally read my speech, right, word from word, from my printout. And my hands were sweaty, and my mouth was dry, and I was shaking. And there was like 6 people in the audience. It's like, and they were all people I kind of knew. So, yeah, it was scary. And it was at a Toastmaster club. I had done it before, but I remember even before that, like I'd be in a conference room and someone would say, okay, we're going to go around the room and have you introduce yourself. And as it got closer to me, I got more sweaty and more nervous, and tried to figure out what I was going to say. And then I stood up for like 10 seconds, introduced myself, and sat down, and then it's over. And then this wave of relief comes. And so that fear is just, it can be really potent and very paralyzing. And, the beauty about it, and tell me if you agree with this, is that when you get that fear under control, when you get that fear managed, on the other side of that is all your brilliance, all your genius around speaking and the message that you want to deliver. So on the other side of that fear is this all this desire and knowledge that you have that you can share with the world. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to by overcoming this fear. What would you say? Would you say that's true for you as well?
Yeah, it takes, for me, it took and is still taking a lot of continuous effort, just like musicians and athletes, they practice consistently. And for me, I'm not a natural speaker by any means. So for me, I have to get up there every week and take the opportunities that come my way. But there is a point where instead of being overwhelmed and kind of shut down by the anxiety, so that you're not even aware of what's going around you in the room, and you're not even able to listen to the other speakers because you're so wrapped up about your 2 or 3 minutes that you have to be speaking, there comes a point where you can just relax into the experience, and it becomes more like having a conversation with friends or coworkers rather than the paralyzing experience of going blank and really being in a not enjoyable situation.
Right.
But it takes some time. Took me a long time and a lot of trial runs.
Well, good. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things, the techniques that we used. And, for me, it's been 17 years since I started this. And there's some things that really helped me move through it faster, but it took a little while to work on them. I know Hillary has a similar experience. So today we're going to share with you at least our top 3. And if we have more, we'll go even deeper into that, techniques that will help you get there faster, get through that faster, and start to manage those fears. And we'll start with Hillary. Hillary, what are your top 3? What are your top 3 techniques for getting through that?
Well, my personal technique is just to really practice it. If you have time, you're not always given the luxury of having time to prepare. But if that you have a project that you're going to present and you have some time. For me, I just like to put in a lot of practice, because at the end of the day, if I know I've done my best with the time I had, it takes a lot of the pressure off me. Of course, there are occasions when you're just asked by your boss or whoever to stand up and speak, but there are lots of occasions where you do get time to practice. So I like to practice standing up. I like to practice my gestures. I'll practice in front of the mirror. I'll practice looking at my dogs as my audience. I'll practice with all kinds of distracting things going on in the background, so that I become really familiar, not word for word with what I want to say, but really familiar with the key phrases in my presentation. I want to be really familiar with my transitions, how I'm going to move from one point to the next. I do want to be really familiar, almost to the point of memorization, with my first opening sentence and my last closing sentence. And also familiar enough with my content that if someone says, we thought we had 10 minutes for you, but now we only have 5 minutes for you to speak, I know where I can cut my content and still have it hang together and make sense to the audience. So for me, number one thing is practice before the presentation.
If I may add to that, and if you're going to give a work presentation, it's awesome if you are part of some kind of a speech club, Toastmasters, Dale Carnegie, or something like that, where you can practice in its entirety before you go into that money-making opportunity or that work or career presentation that you're doing. So practice in a safe place where that's meant to be practiced, and then go into that too. So great advice. I love number one. That was going to be my number one, but Hillary stole it. So
I think it's number one for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's number one off the top of the list. Practice, practice, practice. You will feel so much better. So what's number two for you?
Yeah, and I was going to add something to that too. You said, go to your Toastmasters, your local speaking clubs, because there are certain things that you think the audience is really going to love, or maybe you think that a line is really funny, and then you get to practice in front of an audience and you realize that they don't hear it the same way as you think they're going to hear it. They don't respond to it. So by practicing in front of audiences and getting some feedback, it's a great way to improve your content as well as your confidence. My second thing I was going to suggest for what makes the anxiety a little less on the day is to do some positive visualization of speaking day in the days or even weeks leading up to the presentation. So by visualization, I don't mean going over your content over and over and over again in your head with the words you want to say. I'm talking about visualizing the morning or the afternoon when you're presenting, and just seeing the time unfold in a way that is enjoyable and fun and stress-free. So for me, if I know I'm going to be presenting for an hour in the morning, the few days before, I'll envision getting up on the presentation day feeling really rested, having a good breakfast, putting on my favorite blazer so that I feel confident. Driving to the presentation location, there's no traffic. I find a good place to park. I go into the conference room and I shake hands of people I know and give some hugs to some friends who are there to support me. Getting on stage, having the audience respond well, my presentation going smoothly without any hitches, and getting a nice reception and acknowledgement at the end. So I visualize all that process in the days leading up to the presentation. I find that works really well for me.
Yeah, I love that. And it's said that your subconscious mind is recording all this stuff, and the more you do it, the more your subconscious is just going to automatically do it for you. And it doesn't know the difference between what's happened for real and what you visualize. So the more you visualize it, the more your subconscious is going to automatically do some of these things for you. So it's not so, you don't have to be so conscious in the moment as you're doing these things. And the other thing I heard that I love about visualization is visualizing the end result. Because sometimes, all these things you visualize all the way to the end result is like, it's not going to, it never turns out that way. But if you visualize the end result of everybody just standing up and giving a standing ovation and clapping and just smiles on their face, or the result you're trying to create, sometimes it doesn't matter how you get there. If that's the result you're going to get, then hey, who cares how you get there, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what's number three for you? What did you come up for number three?
Well, number three for me is being familiar as much as possible with the space in which I'm going to present. You can't always get into the room where you're going to be presenting, but sometimes you can. So if it's possible, I like to go into the room, do a couple of practice rounds in the space, so I know how big the room is, how much I'm going to have to work on my voice projection, where the light comes in, if I'm going to have sun in my eyes, whether I'm going to put on extra lights in the room.
Right.
If I'm using PowerPoint, I like to familiarize myself with the cables and the system that's available for me to use. So I set up the room in a way as similar to what it's going to be on presentation day as possible, and do a couple of rounds of rehearsal. You can't always do that. Sometimes you cannot get into the room. In that case, you could always ask the conference manager, whoever is familiar with the space, to maybe take a photograph for you and send it to you. So at least you have some idea in your head of where you'll be when you're presenting. It just, for me, it's like the more things you can knock off the list of things to worry about, the better. It just gives you less to think about on the day, so that you're fully focused on connecting with the audience, making sure that you're speaking in a way where the audience can understand your message and connect with it.
Right. I totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Well, and that kind of is a great lead into my number one, which is also environment in a different way. And you and I talked about this a little before we started the show today. And my number one was environment, but not so much the physical environment, but the people you surround yourself with. What I found in the last 17 years of doing public speaking is that if you're with a group that's negative, it's not going to be a fun experience, and you're really not going to, you may grow a little bit in your skills and stuff, but your confidence won't grow. And as a public speaker, it's very similar to being an entrepreneur. You need that confidence. You should always be building that confidence and always be putting yourself into situations that are going to build your confidence. So if you're in a negative group, get out as fast as you can, or work to transform that group, which is really hard. I would say get out as fast as you can, find a group that is positive, and start building that confidence, because confidence on stage is just invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. And not only getting with people who have your best interests at heart, but also people who are going to give you honest feedback, because we can practice and rehearse in front of people, and if they aren't invested in us, they'll just say, oh yeah, great job, but maybe they don't feel comfortable giving us feedback, or maybe it's just not worth their effort for whatever reason. So finding the people who really care enough to give you insightful feedback and feel comfortable enough to give you honest feedback of what you can change to improve, what they like and what they didn't enjoy so much about the presentation.
Yeah, excellent. Because you don't want people telling you we were great, and then you go into that really important presentation and you're really not great, or something could have improved. So excellent point. Number two for me, and I know this was a big deal at the beginning, because I tried to talk about a lot of things that I really wanted to know more about. So I figured, I'd pick this topic because I want to know more about it. And then I go in there and I didn't know that much about it, and I'd lose my place and I wasn't real sure of it. And I found that talking about topics that I didn't know a lot about, or I didn't do enough research on, was a disaster and really ruined my confidence. So now I really try and stick to the things that I know well. And sometimes you don't have to know the whole topic well, but you should know the points that you're going to cover well. And that's important in becoming a speaker, is know your topic well. That way if you get off point, or something happens, or there's a calamity in the audience that you have to stop, you can start right away again and get right on track. And that's really a sign of a professional. And even if you're just starting out, if you know your topic well, you can still do that. So that's real key, is know your topic well. And kind of piggybacking on top of that is that also understand you may not be the smartest person in the room, which is okay. And you may not, what I mean by that is that you may not be the person that knows the most on that topic. And you probably will never be that person, but you can be someone who knows it really well and can communicate to 80% or 90% of the audience. And that's really what you're shooting for. You're never going to shoot for perfection. You're never going to hit that. But if you can shoot for 80 or 90%, you're going to get most of the people, and you'll have an excellent result as a result of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you say, it's rare that we're going to be the world expert on any subject, unfortunately. Right. But, choosing a subject that at least, even if you don't know as much as you wish you knew, something that you really connected with and you have a passion for, you can get excited about, because I think the audience is really forgiving. You know, they can forgive a speaker who is obviously nervous. They can forgive a speaker who might not have all the facts and figures at their fingertips. But if a speaker looks bored or just does not look interested in their own presentation material, that's pretty much a killer. So trying to, when possible, sometimes you can't choose. Sometimes you're given the topic that you have to talk about. But when you can choose what it is you want to present, choose something that you can share your excitement for with the audience. They'll really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And as you're talking about that, I'm looking for the place on this this live stream where it tells me how far we've gone, how much time we've gone, but it's not here, so we'll go on. The number 3 I think I had that I thought was really important, and this has helped me a lot in the middle of your presentation. If you can engage the audience more during your presentation, people will walk away thinking they got the most out of it, because they'll have contributed, there'll be other points of view, and everyone will come together in kind of this forum. And so when you can engage the audience, it really helps. Now, one of the things I learned at the beginning of a presentation, if you're real nervous, you need to catch your breath, or you need a drink of water, or something happened that distracted you and you need to go over your opening notes again, sometimes it's good to get the audience in a, maybe a meeting exercise or some kind of exercise that only lasts for 3 to 5 minutes. That helps you collect your thoughts, collect your breath, calm down, there's energy in the room, and then you start into your speech. So anytime you can engage the audience and allow them to respond back, it gives you the opportunity to calm down, catch your breath, think about what you're going to say, and then get back on track. And so engaging the audience, I think, is a real big tip on kind of moving through that presentation and staying on track and really bringing people in and engaging them and having them feel like they really got the most out of it.
Yes, and not only does it help you as a speaker kind of calm your nerves, and it takes the focus away from you, and you can focus more on the audience's interaction with one another. As an audience member, it took me a long time to realize what was going on with the speakers I most enjoyed listening to. I would finally realize that the why I'm so engaged with these particular speakers is that they do make a point of involving the audience throughout the presentation. Maybe they'll ask a rhetorical question, or maybe, as you suggested, Bob, they'll invite the audience to interact with one another for a minute or two. But those speakers really are able to captivate the audience, because as audience members, it's quite hard work to maintain focus on a presentation for, even 10, 15 minutes. Our minds just naturally can wander, even on the best speakers. So having those questions that you pose to the audience, it just kind of catches their minds again if they've drifted off for a few moments, and gets them reconnected to what it is you're saying and actively engaged with the content. So it seems so simple, to ask the audience a question or ask them to do a little exercise, but it really, really works.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we had talked about a couple bonus things, and geez, some of these things that we're going to talk about now are just as high on the list. I think everything's tied for first, second, or third, because they're so important, and some things work better for other people than they do for you. So, and vice versa. So here's a couple other bonus techniques that I think might also help you if you can remember them in the moment. And I'll have Hillary start with her number 1 bonus technique.
My number 1 bonus technique, I think, is just to realize that everyone in their speaking careers has a certain trajectory. And for most of us, there are peaks and troughs. It's not just, sudden success and continued amazing success throughout. There are good days and there are bad days. And there will be presentations where your tech fails and the audience just doesn't seem to, respond well to what you want to communicate. And just knowing that that's just part of being a speaker. It's going to happen, not taking it personally. If you've practiced, you've got good content, and you've given it all you have to give, that's the best you can do. Knowing that at the end of the day, your family and your dogs and cats are still going to love you. Your friends are still going to like you. You're not going to be, a disgrace for the rest of your life. It's okay. And to pick yourself back up and to just get on with the next speaking opportunity. Learn from, the days that don't go well. ask the audience what they enjoyed and what needed work, and learn from that, and do the work of improving the content that was weak.
Yeah.
But the ups and downs are just par for the course.
I like that a lot, and it kind of reminds me of something that I've actually made fear a trigger for me. And what it means is that if I feel myself really anxious before I go on, what I've trained myself to realize in that moment is that, oh, I got a lot of fear. That means that I'm focused on myself and not on delivering the message to the audience. Because if I was focused on delivering the message to the audience, I'd be focused on, well, okay, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it, and not so much focused on me and the fear that I'm feeling. So if that helps you, that's a great trigger. It's like, oh, I'm feeling fear. Okay, I'm focused on myself. Let's focus on the audience. Let's get this message to them because it's important. And if you're speaking, you probably have something important to say. Yeah. So good stuff. And you also had something else. I love the
I'm sure we could keep going on for a long time here. A couple of things. I think if you don't feel any anxiety, it's probably not a good thing. It means you just don't care. So the excitement, knowing that fear and excitement are pretty much the same thing, except fear doesn't have the breath. We're kind of paralyzed with fear. But excitement physiologically in the body is pretty much the same thing. So just knowing that this upwelling of extra energy is completely normal. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm so scared, you rechannel it and you rephrase it and say, oh gosh, I'm so excited for this speaking opportunity. And there's a great writer, Susan Jeffries. I really love her. She wrote a book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she talks about those butterflies we can feel. And sometimes the butterflies are circling around and we can feel the turbulence. And she said, you know what, the aim is not to get rid of the butterflies. The aim is to get the butterflies to start flying in formation so that you have your energy focused on connecting with the audience and getting them your message. So not trying to banish the anxiety. No, it's completely normal. Consider it as excitement.
Yeah.
Relabel it as excitement and enjoy it. Go for it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. There's a technique for myself that I use that I think will resonate with a lot of people. And that is, a lot of people say, well, memorize your speech or know what you're going to do. And, don't bring your notes up. And I say, forget about that. Bring your notes up. Because in the moment, I'm not saying read from your notes, but in the moment, if you forget where you are, you can go back to that. Having that in the back of your mind, that you have that safety net there just in case, I think it's really important. And it's important to the audience too, because if you forget where you are and you sit there for 30 seconds trying to figure out, well, where am I, as opposed to going to your notes and getting there in 10 seconds, you can almost do that seamlessly by creating an exercise or engaging an audience member or something like, something of that nature. So bring your notes up there, have them in your pocket if you need to. You don't necessarily need to refer to them. I usually bring them up and I don't refer to them, but if I need them, they are there and they do act like a mental safety net. I highly recommend that. And on top of that, I would also say, get a little bottle of water and have it sitting right there, because sometimes you do get nervous and it's nice to just pick up a bottle of water and have a sip and get back on track versus trying to tough it out. I remember I gave a speech one time and my mouth was so dry that my lips were sticking to my teeth, and I'm talking like this the whole time. And it was horrible. It was torture for me. And I can't imagine it looked good for the audience. So have that bottle of water up there. That's real important, especially if you're giving a professional presentation.
Yeah, that's key. Stay hydrated, and also, a lot of coffee drinkers, they'll be swinging their coffee all morning, and I would say, if you are a habitual coffee drinker, have a cup, in the morning, but then stop drinking your coffee, because the caffeine will dehydrate you, and it will add to that kind of dry mouth, sticky factor as you're speaking.
Yeah,
so
anxiety
easy on the caffeine.
All right, and then you were talking about breathing. I think this is so important. So what do you have to say about breathing?
So everyone I know who's either a singer or in theater or a public speaker, their biggest tool is their breath. And it sounds so simple. And when you tell someone, if you really struggle with anxiety, you just learn to breathe through it. And they say, no, that's way too simple. I need something way more sophisticated than just breath to get me through my fear. And they really don't. It's simple and it's effective. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do as speakers is learn to breathe from our diaphragm so that our voice is supported. So what I like to do 15, 20 minutes before I know I'm going to speak is, if I'm sitting in a chair, I'll just put my hands on my stomach and just connect with my breath and make sure that I can feel my hands moving with the intake and out breath, so I can feel myself breathing, and it's just grounding. When we're anxious, oftentimes our breath will be shallow, top of the chest breath, and that just increases the overall nervousness. So we want to get our breath down and deep, supporting the voice, and just put the hands on the stomach. No one will know what you're doing, but you just check in and make sure that the breath is going down deep.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I noticed when I first started speaking, again, dry mouth, wet hands, shaking hands, reading from my script, and I wasn't breathing. I noticed I was like holding my breath, and I'd find myself out of breath in the middle of my talks. And by the time I was done, it was like I had just swam a couple laps. So yeah, breathing is so key, and we do it in our conversations, but when we get up in front of a stage, sometimes we forget to do that.
Yeah. And for me, when I'm considering the content, and I'm someone who I like to write out the wording of my presentation, for me, learning to present in shorter, simpler sentences has been really important. If you have a presentation where your sentences are really long, not only is it very tiring for the audience to listen to, but as a speaker, you run out of breath. So your projection at the end of your sentences gets weak. And if you're speaking for 15, 20 minutes or even longer, you're going to end up feeling really drained and exhausted by the experience.
Right.
So keeping your sentences shorter, simpler, so that you can pause between each sentence, take a breath. And between your sections, between your main points, you can take, a beat or two or three longer, and take a round of 1 or 2 breaths. The audience really enjoys that, because they get a chance to digest what it is you've just been telling them about. So they love it, and you as a speaker will feel much more dynamic and energetic if you learn to breathe and pause.
Awesome. And one last thing that I'll say here about some of these techniques. I talked about notes earlier. Bring your notes up, put them in your pocket, put them on the podium or whatever. There's another way to use your notes that I think is absolutely brilliant, and it's like display them so everyone can see them. And people do this all the time, and you don't know it, and it's hidden in plain sight. It's called a PowerPoint or a flip chart. And those can be your notes. Those can be your triggers to remember where you are and what your points are. And you can use them to keep yourself on track. So if you have a flip chart, you're going over point number 1, you can even have a quote as you're opening, and then flip it, and then point number 1, point number 2, and point number 3, or, with your PowerPoint, you can do something similar to that. So flip charts and PowerPoints can be and should be used to help keep you on track as well. So, that's a technique that I think, especially if you're just getting started, you really need those notes. It's a great way to use notes without seeming like you're using notes.
Yes. And just to clarify that, because we've talked about this before, Bob and I know, so you're not suggesting that someone writes out really long, complicated bullet points that they read from. You're just talking about keywords and images that act as memory triggers.
Exactly. Yeah. Memory triggers, small phrases that the audience can get, that will jog your memory. The audience will see where you are, and they'll stay on track, and you'll stay on track as well.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been awesome, Hillary. I think we covered many things. Of course, there's so many things you can do. And if you have a technique, we'd love to hear from you. Go on to Speakers Resource Center and post some information of what you think has helped you in your process of overcoming and managing the fear of public speaking. And if you're looking for a place to practice, and I think that, again, Hillary and I both agree, and I think many people agree, practice is so key. Find a Toastmaster club. They're super cheap. I think you can join one for like $2 a meeting. It is what the fees turn out to be. And for an hour of time, you get to go out there, practice your public speaking in front of a live audience, get some solid feedback, and continue to work and get better and better and better. If you're working for a large organization, there's chances are you got a Toastmaster club in your organization. And if you don't, you can work to get one there. We're opening new clubs all the time. So, so go to Toastmasters.org click on find a club, and you can type in your zip code and find a club within a matter of less than a minute. You can have a couple clubs in your area that you can start to go out to. So Hillary, thanks for joining us today. This has been awesome, and I love the content that you shared with us today. We're definitely all going to be able to use that. Even if we're been speaking for 17 years, I think we can use some of this stuff. So this is great.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Hillary. We'll talk to you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.